Her small hands trembled as she clutched the sleeve of a man she had never met before. Tears streamed down her dirt-stained cheeks, and her voice cracked as she struggled to speak. "They hurt my mom, a broken bar, she's dying." The restaurant froze. Glasses stopped midair. Conversations vanished. Every face turned toward the child. But the man she had chosen to beg was no ordinary diner. He was the most dangerous mafia boss in the city, a name that carried fear wherever it was spoken. What happened next would become a moment no one in that room could ever erase from memory. The Golden Palm was alive with quiet power. Well-dressed men filled the tables, expensive wine flowed freely, and deals were whispered instead of spoken aloud. This was not just a restaurant, it was Vincent Torino's territory. The staff knew better than to listen, and the guests understood the rules without needing them explained. Mind your business, show respect, never draw attention. Vincent sat in his usual corner, a towering figure whose presence demanded silence. Years of dominance had carved authority into his very posture. His sharp eyes missed nothing, and his word carried more weight than the law. Around him sat his most trusted men, discussing money, borders, and problems that were solved without emotion. Vincent survived because he believed one thing above all else: feelings were dangerous. Mercy was weakness, and weakness led to death. That belief had protected him for decades, until the door burst open. The heavy wooden entrance slammed hard enough to echo through the room. Heads snapped around as the Matilda registered tradee rushed forward, panic written across his face. Then everyone saw her. A little girl stood in the doorway, shaking. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her clothes were ripped and filthy, blood staining her small dress. Her hair hung in messy tangles around a face streaked with tears and dirt. She looked like a child who had escaped something terrible. Her wide eyes scanned the room desperately, searching for help. Some people looked away, irritated by the interruption. Others whispered, assuming she was just another lost street child begging for money. But she wasn't asking for money. She was searching for hope. Her gaze stopped at Vincent's table. Somehow, she sensed power there. Maybe it was the way the men around him deferred. Maybe it was his suit, his watch, the space people gave him. Or maybe it was something deeper, a child's instinct recognizing the one person who could change everything. Without hesitation, she ran toward him. The air went tight. Vincent's bodyguards stiffened, hands moving toward their jackets. No one approached Vincent Torino like this. No one ever dared. Before anyone could stop her, the girl reached him and grabbed his sleeve with both hands. Her tiny fingers clung to the expensive fabric like it was the only thing keeping her standing. "They hurt my mama," she cried. "She's dying." The silence that followed was unbearable. Every eye locked onto Vincent, waiting. His reputation was built on being cold, untouchable, merciless. He had never shown compassion unless it served a purpose. He looked down at the child clinging to his arm. Her tear-filled brown eyes stared up at him, full of fear and fragile hope. Something shifted inside his chest. Long ago, Vincent Torino had been a different man. Once, he had loved deeply. He had been married to a woman named Maria, the only person who could soften him, the only one who truly knew him. They had dreamed of a future, of children, of something pure in a dirty world. Those dreams ended in blood. A rival family didn't come for Vincent directly. They chose something far more cruel. They took Maria. Vincent returned home to find everything he cared about destroyed in a single moment. Justice never came. The police asked questions they never intended to answer. That night taught him a brutal lesson. Love was a weakness others could exploit, so he buried his heart behind walls no one could breach. He became ruthless because ruthlessness kept him alive. He became feared because fear meant control. He chose loneliness because it kept everyone else safe from being used against him. Those walls had never failed him. Until now. The girl tightened her grip, her words breaking through sobs as she explained. Her name was Sophie. Her mother, Elena, owned a small flower shop in a rough neighborhood. They lived above it, and just the two of them, surviving honestly where honesty was punished. Two rival gangs demanded protection money. Elena couldn't pay both. She refused to choose. That choice cost her everything. Men came after closing time. They demanded money that didn't exist. When Elena tried to protect what little she had, violence followed. Sophie hid behind the counter as her world shattered. The men beat her mother until she stopped moving. then destroyed the shop and left laughing. When it was over, Sophie crawled out and found her mother barely breathing. I tried to wake her, she whispered, but she won't open her eyes. A broken bar. There's so much blood. Even Vincent's hardened men shifted uneasily. Vincent wasn't thinking about territory or consequences. For the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking like a boss. He was thinking like a man who once lost everything. He looked at Sophie, a child brave enough to walk into hell and ask the devil for help. She hadn't gone to the police. She hadn't found numbers. Somehow, she had found him. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked softly, a tone no one there had ever heard from him. "Sophie," she sobbed. "Sophie Martinez." Vincent nodded slowly, then lifted his eyes to his bodyguard. "Get the car," he said quietly. Now, for Tony, this was unheard of. He had never seen Vincent act on impulse, never seen emotion drive a command like this. "Boss, maybe we shoulda," I said. "Get the car." Vincent's voice was calm, but there was iron beneath it, a reminder that despite everything, he was still in control. Tony didn't argue again and moved quickly toward the exit. Vincent turned back to Sophie. For a man of his size, the gentleness in his movements was unexpected. He lowered himself beside her chair until they were eye to eye. His broad frame should have been frightening, yet somehow it made her feel safe. "Sophie," he said softly, steady and clear, "I'm going to help your mother, but I need you to help me first. I need you to tell me exactly what the men look like. Can you do that?" She nodded at once, relief washing over her face. Between sniffles and tears, she began to describe them. Two young men, red bandanas, one with a long scar down his left cheek, the other with a spider tattoo on his neck. She remembered their names too, Carlos and Miguel. Vincent's expression darkened. He knew those names. Carlos Vega and Miguel Santos, enforcers for the Red Serpents, a crew known for cruelty, known for hurting people who couldn't fight back. They'd been pushing into neutral ground for years, but these a broken bar. This crossed the line. Vincent rose to his feet. Decision settled. "Marco," he said to one of his lieutenants, "call Dr. Chen. Have him meet us at General Hospital. Emergency surgery. No delays." Marco didn't hesitate. Dr. Chen was one of the best trauma surgeons in the city, and deeply in Vincent's debt. If anyone could save Sophie's mother, it was him. Then Vincent turned to another man. "I want Carlos Vega and Miguel Santos found. Bring them to the warehouse on 5th Street, alive. I'd like to discuss their work ethic." Sal smiled, already understanding. "Done, boss." Vincent took one last look around the restaurant at the stunned faces, the whispers that would turn into legend. People would talk about this night for years. The night Vincent Torino showed mercy. The night a child changed a monster. He didn't care. All that mattered was the small hand slipping into his. "Is my mama going to be okay?" Sophie asked quietly. Vincent squeezed her hand. "I'll make sure she is." He never made promises he didn't intend to keep. The black sedan cut through the city streets with purpose. Sophie sat beside Vincent, her body finally easing, exhaustion replacing fear. She had stopped crying, but every few moments she looked up at him, as if checking that he was still real. Tony drove with practiced focus. Two cars followed behind, one carrying Dr. Chen and his equipment, the other filled with Vincent's most trusted men. The damage was visible the moment they arrived. The shop's front window lay shattered. Flowers were crushed underfoot. Petals smeared across the sidewalk. The sign that once proudly bore Elena's name hung broken and crooked. But Vincent's eyes went straight inside. Sophie's grip tightened as they stepped out. The air smelled of crushed roses and ruined lives. Inside, among overturned displays and scattered petals, a woman lay motionless, Elena Martinez. Her hair spread across the floor, blood pooling beneath her head. Her breaths were shallow, uneven. Vincent had seen enough death to know how close she was to it. Dr. Chen rushed past them, already working. "Severe head trauma," he muttered. "Possible internal bleeding. We need to move her immediately." Vincent watched, but his attention split. Sophie stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the wreckage of her home. Her mother's dream, destroyed. "Sophie," Vincent said gently, crouching to her level, "the doctor is helping your mama. I need you to be strong for her. Okay?" She nodded, tears falling. Will she remember me when she wakes up? The question struck deeper than any bullet ever had. Vincent thought of Maria, of everything taken from him. She will, he said firmly, and she'll be proud of you. As paramedics moved Elaine up, Vincent's phone vibrated. Boss, Sal said, efficient and calm. We've got them. They were bragging at a bar. They're secured. Vincent's jaw tightened. The protective fire inside him turned to something colder, darker. Good, he replied. I'll come after Sophie is safe. At the hospital, Sophie whispered prayers, talking softly to her unconscious mother, promising to behave if she would just wake up. Vincent held her hand the entire time. Arrangements were made swiftly. Private room, constant security, the best care money could buy. Sophie finally fell asleep clutching a stuffed bear a nurse had given her, a peaceful now, far from the terrified child who had run into his restaurant. Vincent stepped into the hallway and made the call. Bring the car. It's time to see our guests. The 5th Street warehouse was quiet, sealed, forgotten. Inside, Carlos Vega and Miguel Santos sat bound to chairs. Their swagger was gone, replaced by raw fear. Vincent entered slowly, his presence filling the space. Gentlemen, he said calmly, I hear you had a productive night. Carlos tried to bargain. Miguel tried to breathe through the panic. Vincent circled them slowly. Tell me, he said, voice low. What business category does beating a mother in front of her child fall under? No answer. He placed the child's crayon drawing on the table. A woman surrounded by flowers. This is Sophie Martinez, he said, 7 years old, loves butterflies, dreams of being a teacher. Tonight, she watched you nearly kill her mother over $67. The room went silent. That's all Elena had. Vincent continued, and you decided it was worth destroying a child's world for it. When Carlos tried to excuse himself, Vincent cut him off. If you'd known she was there, he said coldly, you'd have hurt her too. He reached for a pair of heavy pliers, testing their weight thoughtfully. Here's how this works, Vincent said calmly. You're going to tell me every dollar your gang stole from that neighborhood. Then you're going to help me return it. When they mentioned their boss, Vincent smiled, a smile without warmth. Protection? He said quietly. We'll see how much protection he really has. He set the pliers down and picked up his phone. Tony, he said, set up a meeting. I want to meet Razor Rodriguez. Rodriguez tonight if possible, Vincent said calmly. Tell him Vincent Torino wants a conversation about how his organization treats its customers. As Tony stepped aside to make the call, Vincent turned back to the two men bound to their chairs. You see, he said evenly, I've been in this life a long time. I've taken territory, broken rivals, collected debts, but even men like us have rules. His eyes hardened. And tonight, you shattered every one of them. The warehouse sank into silence, broken only by Miguel's quiet sobbing. Carlos stared at the crayon drawing on the table, the weight of his actions finally beginning to settle in. Vincent's phone rang. He answered instantly. How is she? Critical, but stable, Dr. Chen said from the hospital. The next stretch matters most. She's stronger than she looks. Relief eased something tight inside Vincent. Then the doctor added, Sophie asked me to tell you broken bar thank you for keeping your word. Vincent closed his eyes briefly before ending the call. He looked back at Carlos and Miguel, not with rage now, but something closer to pity. Elena Martinez is going to survive, he told them. Which means you didn't just ruin lives, you nearly ended one. He turned toward the door, then stopped. Think about what you did tonight. About a child who will wake from nightmares because of you. About a woman who may never feel safe behind her own counter again. Then decide what kind of men you want to be if you live long enough to choose. He left them there with their thoughts. The night wasn't over, but Vincent felt something inside him shift. For the first time in decades, he wasn't fighting for control or reputation. He was fighting for the same thing that had driven a terrified child to grab his sleeve. Family. The meeting took place at a forgotten auto shop on the industrial edge of the city. Oil and rust filled the air, the lights flickering weakly overhead. Vincent arrived with Tony and several men, their presence cutting through the darkness like a warning. Razor Rodriguez was younger than expected, dripping with gold and false confidence. The kind of man who hid behind others while pretending to rule. Vincent recognized him immediately. A loud, flashy, Hello. Razor extended a hand. Vincent ignored it. I hear you don't usually deal with street-level problems anymore, Razor said. Vincent let the silence stretch until discomfort settled into the room. Street level, he repeated. Is that what you call brutalizing mothers and terrifying children? Razor smirked weakly. Business is business. People forget their obligations. Your men, Vincent said quietly, put a 7-year-old girl through hell. They nearly killed her mother over $67. The air shifted. She was behind, Razor muttered. We warned her. Vincent stepped closer. Razor stepped back without realizing it. Do you know who Elena Martinez is? Vincent asked. She runs a flower shop. She runs a shop that barely keeps food on the table. She works endlessly, creating beauty for people who have more than she ever will. She buried her husband and kept going for her daughter. Vincent's voice stayed calm, but pressure built beneath it. She fell behind because she spent her last savings on medicine to save her child, and you decided that made her disposable. Razor tried to speak. Vincent didn't let him. That little girl didn't call the police. She didn't hide. She walked alone through darkness to find help. Vincent pulled out the drawing again and held it up. This is courage. This is strength. The garage was silent. Vincent tucked the drawing back into his jacket. Here's how this ends, he said. Now all business. Your operation disappears from that neighborhood. Every debt erased. Every dollar returned. Razor protested. Vincent silenced him with a look. You'll sell whatever you have to. And if I hear your people anywhere near her shop again, I'll personally teach you what consequences really mean. Razor swallowed and nodded. Life slowly returned to Elena Martinez's flower shop. New windows gleamed. Flowers bloomed again. Sophie played safely nearby. Laughter replacing fear. Vincent still came by regularly, not as a kingpin, but as a man who had chosen something different. The city told its own version of the story, but Sophie knew the truth. She didn't save her mother by finding the most dangerous man in Chicago. She saved him by reminding him that even the hardest heart can choose love over fear. Sometimes, the smallest hands carry the power to change everything.